Facial recognition makes a mistake, resulting in the arrest of an innocent black man in Georgia who doesn't even look like the perp. How common is it for law enforcement to use facial recognition, and are the upsides of this cutting-edge technology worth the risks it poses to freedom and privacy? Stick around as we attempt to answer these questions and much more on cybercrime. Welcome to Cybercrime. Throughout history, we can find many examples of new technologies either intentionally or accidentally hurting innocent people. With law enforcement in particular, technologies like predictive policing algorithms, license plate readers, and stingray devices have been criticized for unfairly targeting communities of color. These technologies have been shown to have biases and inaccuracies that can lead to false arrests, increased surveillance, and disproportionate impacts. Crime busting with facial recognition may sound less frightening than these other emerging law enforcement technologies, since many of us already have gotten comfortable with having this tech in our pockets every day. But it may surprise you to learn just how widely law enforcement already utilizes facial recognition in a variety of ways, and with more applications on the horizon. According to the Pew Research Center, more than half of US adults think that's a good idea, and only 27% don't. Additionally, Pew found that more than half of all Americans think corporations or the government already collects data on them every day. And they're right. A Georgetown law study done in 2016 found that real-time face recognition allowing for the continuous scanning of pedestrian faces with street surveillance cameras was already in use in some US cities, and that half of American adults were already part of law enforcement's facial recognition databases back then. Imagine today. Now, before those chills go too far up your spine, let's not ignore the benefits of facial recognition.
The purpose of law enforcement is to keep the public safe. And so facial recognition can be used to help identify potential bad actors in an environment where there's a massive crowd or where they need situational awareness in a really complex situation.
Previously, authorities had to rely on traditional methods like eyewitness identification to solve crimes. However, with the advent of facial recognition technology, law enforcement now has access to over 750 billion photos and tens of millions of security camera feeds, both public and private. This allows for the quick identification of persons of interest at lightning speed. According to a 2022 article from website Comparatech, among the most surveilled cities in the world are Mexico City at 140 cameras per square mile, New York with 187, Singapore at 387, and Delhi, India with a whopping 1,446 cameras per square mile. That's 436,600 surveillance cameras. Now, before we go any further, let's explore how facial recognition works.
Digital facial recognition technology works somewhat similarly from how human facial recognition works. We have a programmable brain called a neural network. What we do to encode that information is we show it lots of examples. And then based on the mistakes it made, tune the internals of the network so that it does a better job next time.
How widely is facial recognition technology being used in law enforcement and by government agencies and surveillance?
Pretty widely at this point. I think it's safe to presume that the vast majority are using this. And if they aren't, it's likely that they will be in the near future.
In perhaps its most high-profile use in a criminal case, facial recognition was utilized in 2013 to identify the suspects in the Boston Marathon bombing. On April 15, 2013, the Tsarnaev brothers planted pressure cooker bombs near the race finish line. The resulting explosion injured 280 people and killed 3. The FBI used facial recognition software to compare images of the suspects taken from surveillance cameras with a database of known criminals and identified the 2 brothers responsible for the attack. Facial rec has also seen success in missing persons cases, including in the case of a 13-year-old autistic boy in India who'd been missing for 5 years and was found at a home for children. Because of facial recognition technology, he was returned to the arms of his mother. However, despite this great potential, facial recognition technology is still in its early stages and hasn't yet achieved full-scale adoption by all law enforcement. This is due in part to valid concerns about its accuracy, which can be influenced by factors like lighting conditions, facial expressions, aging, and even race. Also, sometimes people just look like other people. In fact, a website called Twin Strangers matches people with identical faces. Kind of fun, right? But what happened to a man named Randal Reid was anything but. On November 25th, 2022, Reid, a 28-year-old African-American transportation analyst, was driving on a Georgia highway when he saw flashing lights in his rearview mirror. When he was pulled over, he was surprised to learn he was under arrest for committing a crime in Louisiana. Reid was quoted as saying, "They told me I had a warrant out of Jefferson Parish. I said, 'What is Jefferson Parish?' "I have never been to Louisiana a day in my life." Then the police told him it was for theft, to which he replied, "I also don't steal." Nonetheless, Reid was handcuffed and taken to jail. Why? Because facial recognition had identified him as a purse thief wanted for crimes in Jefferson Parish and Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Police were alleging Reid had been involved in the theft of Chanel and Louis Vuitton handbags worth $10,000. It gets worse. Detectives in Baton Rouge saw the warrant out for Reid's alleged June heist and issued another one, accusing him of being part of a purse theft gang. There was only one small problem. Reid had never been to Louisiana. Okay, two small problems. He was innocent!
I get a call from his family on a Sunday night back in November. By Tuesday morning, I got the police report, and I noticed that it's a store called the Second Act on Metairie Road. I go to the store, and I was shown a picture of the perpetrator. And I said, my God, his face is identical, but it's not him. This guy's 40 pounds heavier than Randal Reid. So I called the detectives back and I told them, I said, look, you made a big mistake.
In other words, facial recognition had screwed up, and this wasn't the first time. Reid's case sheds light on the problems with facial recognition technology, particularly the potential for mass surveillance that raises significant privacy concerns. Though facial recognition algorithms boast a more than 90% accuracy level, the problem is research doesn't show this holds up across all demographics. Those who are female, black, and 18 to 34 can fare much worse, according to a science blog on harvard.edu. For example, the Gender Shades Project showed in 2018 that the error rate for darker-skinned females was 34% higher than that of lighter-skinned males. Critics and researchers alike point out the cameras aren't calibrated for darker skin, and that this results in lower quality database images for people of color.
Some of the big problems that exist with facial recognition are really bias in its use. These models are often trained on publicly available data, and that data usually comes from the internet. And anybody who's been on the internet knows that the internet is not perfectly representative of the population as a whole. And so if you've got a biased sample of data you're training the model on, it is easy for that model to become biased itself.
As the potential of facial recognition technology rapidly grows, so too do ethical concerns, leading to numerous lawsuits filed by individuals and organizations like the ACLU. The ACLU's website states, "Face recognition surveillance presents an unprecedented threat to our privacy and civil liberties. It gives governments, companies, and individuals the power to spy on us wherever we go, tracking our faces at protests, political rallies, places of worship, and more." The ACLU is taking to the courts, streets, legislatures, city councils, and even corporate boardrooms to defend our rights against the growing dangers of this unregulated surveillance technology. After 6 days in jail, law enforcement finally admitted their mistake, acknowledging the differences between Reid and the suspect, and released Reid on December 1st after the Jefferson Parish Sheriff's Office rescinded the warrant. And Reid has filed a lawsuit against the authorities involved in his wrongful arrest, seeking compensation for the harm he suffered.
And they called me back an hour later and they said, we got the wrong guy. We're going to let him out. So he spent about 6 or 7 days in a Georgia jail on a crime he didn't commit, thinking he's going to get extradited to Louisiana and perhaps go to prison. With facial recognition, it's not 100%. There's somebody out there that looks just like you and just like me. Police just have to use it as one tool. It's just one tool in the box.
This case highlights the need for caution in using facial recognition technology, as it can result in significant harm to individuals, even when they're completely innocent. However, despite the rush by some to broadly condemn policing and kneecap their resources, this issue remains a hot-button topic for communities across the country who struggle to balance freedom with safety amid rising crime rates.
I think with time, the models can get better. I think it's up to our society to demand that they get better. We have to recognize their limitations. We have to have conversations about their limitations and not just accept them as magic. But if we don't demand it, the companies that provide these are not just going to do it out of the goodness of their heart. If they're making money off of them the way they are, there's not a huge motivation for them to improve them. So I think we as a society have to demand that they are improved.
It seems if we want to catch the Tsarnaevs of the world, the cost will be trampling on the freedoms of innocent men like Randal Reid. I don't know how many times this happens on a regular basis, but if you're Mr. Reid, I assume you'd agree that one time is one too many. Are you concerned facial recognition is infringing on your privacies? Have you ever played around with the tech yourself? Let me know in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel so you don't miss out on a single fascinating cybercrime story going forward. I'm Josh Murphy for Cybernews. Cybernara.